BIC is the only graduate program to teach branding and integrated communication in an integrated way. And that means that our students do not graduate into a specific job, but with a bucket of skills. Our graduates are integrated people for an integrated world. In other words, they are the future. And so let's see how one of BIC's tracks, the public relation tracks, actually works. And I don't mean works within the program, but works out there in the industry. Let's do that by talking to our BIC alums who aren't just zigging and zagging their way through the industry, but making the industry work for them. So our moderator tonight is Edward Ford. Edward, if you want to come into the grid, we'd love to see your face. Edward is a BIC professor, and he is also the senior director of client engagement at Medidata Solutions. He teaches corporate communications in the BIC program, and he's also what I would say has had a bit of a ziggy-zaggy career himself, and I'm sure he's going to bring that in to the group tonight. We're also joined by amazing spectrum of BIC alums who've been out there, in some cases, just a few weeks, and in other cases, ever since our program graduated our first class in 2015. And that person would be represented by Nehal, who is currently the Insights and Product Manager at Verizon. Ahmet is also, so Nehal, it's so great to see you. I love seeing you whenever you are. I see her once in a while. I get to see her on campus because once in a while she teaches. I don't know if you still do, as an adjunct. We're also joined by Ahmet, who graduated in 2016. He is the creative director of RooneyPartners. So Ahmet, give a wave. We're excited to have you here. We see you have RooneyPartners in the background, so nice to have you here. Matt, come on in from BIC 19. Matt, I said to him as I saw him earlier this evening, I'm not sure whether you graduated last week or 15 years ago. It's just been such a crazy last 2 years. He is currently the Director of Development and Alumni Communications at Barnard College. And our last panelist is Tyniece. She graduated actually just a few short weeks ago, so I've seen her pretty recently. Tyniece, why don't you come on camera? She is an executive trainee at Reuter Finn. I'm going to stop my share now because we have everybody except Tyniece. I don't know what happened to her. She possibly could have melted. I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to put you guys exclusively in the grid. There's Tyniece now. I'm going to stop my video. And Edward, I'm going to let you take it away because you are with some of the greatest people I've ever known, and I'm lucky to have them from the BIC program. So take it away, Edward.
Well, Nancy, thank you very much for that energetic introduction. I'm really excited to have this discussion tonight and to talk about this zigzag life that, as you describe it, it definitely describes my career path. And as I've gotten to know Nehal, Ahmet, Matt, and Tyniece in preparation for this, I can see a little bit of zig and a little bit of zag in their paths as well. You heard my name. I'm Edward Ford. I teach in the BIC program, and we can talk a little bit about that later, but I want you to hear a little bit from our panelists and for them to tell you a little bit more about themselves. So let's get this started. Please introduce yourselves. Give us your name. I want you to tell us what you currently do, which I think we heard already, but I want you to explain what you do as if you're trying to tell a family member what it is you do, because we all know that our families have no idea what it is we do. We were just talking about this. You all read my mind. So I want you to tell us as if you're telling, auntie, grandma, dad, they don't know, not tell them like that. Okay. And let's see, Nehal, I'll start with you.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Nehal. What do I do? So, my title is Insights and Product Manager. I actually made that title up because they didn't really have a role for me. So that's ultimate zigzag. But what I do today is I conduct a lot of research, primary research, which means we are doing our own research. It's not stuff that's already there that you can Google. And then I take those insights from that research, communicate it in a way that everyone understands, And then not only that, but take the insights that we've learned and help develop strategies for products.
Awesome. Super clear. I think your mom, your uncle would understand exactly what it is you do. All right, Matt, over to you.
Hey, Grandma, thanks for having me for Hanukkah dinner. I really appreciate it. So what I do, I'm currently the Director of Development and Alumni Communications at Barnard College, which is the premier liberal arts college for women as part of Columbia University. And what I do is I use every single communication method that you could possibly imagine: social media, direct mail, email, texting, phone calling, magazine ads, et cetera, to engage people who went to the college. So if you graduated from Barnard College, or if you're the parent of a student, or if you are currently a student or a faculty member of the college, or even people outside of that, we engage you with communications and events. And then we also ask you for money, and we try to raise money to support the students and support their financial aid, support programs on campus. And so we put them through a donor pipeline of engagement to donor. And that is what I do, Grandma.
Maddie, you made me so proud. Thank you so much. The money man, I got it. All right, Ahmet, over to you.
So I would probably explain this in Turkish to my parents, but today I'm going to try English. I mean, basically, like I have it in my LinkedIn profile, I oversee creative studio, that incorporates a lot of things, but basically from social media marketing, search marketing, for a wide range of clients, from financial services, nonprofit organizations, and healthcare, and other clients from other industries.
Very cool. I love that you have your own department. Give me one sentence of that in Turkish for the chat. Give me one sentence in Turkish.
Merhaba.
There you go. What does that mean?
It's in Turkish.
All right, I'll trust you that it was cool. There you go. All right, so Tyniece, over to you. I know you are our newest of our panel, and you just landed this sweet job at a great PR firm. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing.
Yes, so I'm at Rooterfin. I actually just started working a few weeks ago. I basically do healthcare PR. So I work with a lot of pharmaceutical companies, helping them with releasing some of their drugs and being responsible for the communications for that. So we literally do everything from social media, creating fact sheets, everything you can think of, just to make everything pretty smooth for big pharma when they're coming out with new drugs, just to make sure that everyone understands what the drugs do for people and how they can overall just better help the community.
So as you can hear, thank you, Tyniece. As you can hear, there's a wide variety of experience on this call. You have a variety of industries here, everything from academic to working at a corporate environment to working in an agency environment. You have folks that are building teams. And so I think you can really gain a lot of insight and information from the different perspectives that we have on the call today, which actually leads me to my first kind of official question, which is, I want you to go back, rewind in time. Where were you when you decided, you know what, I want to enroll in the BIC program? Like, what made you think that was something that was important for the next step that you wanted to take? And I'll throw it out to whoever wants to grab that one.
I can totally take it. The funny thing is that I had actually applied to City College for undergraduate to get into their advertising and PR program, but I never got in. But everything happens for a reason. So I ended up trying to find somewhere that I could study PR, just because I always liked reading, writing. I always liked communicating with people. So I eventually figured out a way to incorporate PR into all of that. So I've lost my whole train of thought. Come back to me. I'm so sorry.
All good. So, Sound like you had a little a deviation, and this was a detour that ended up taking you on a wild riding adventure. Pick up your thought, and then anybody else want to jump in on that question? Your thoughts into why you applied, why you ultimately decided to enroll in BIC.
I can jump in. I had a zigzag studying in like my study career, I guess. I have an undergrad where I majored in chemistry and physics. And then I was supposed to be a doctor. I think a lot of people have these stories, but that was my parents' dream and not mine. I ended up studying PR formally after that, and loved it. And I was working at a human rights education organization, so nonprofit, marketing and communications manager, where I felt like I kind of just needed a change. So what I did is I went and looked, I don't know why, but I guess education was, I created education with change for me. And I looked at programs. I remember visiting New York. I'm originally from Canada, and having an awesome time there. And I was like, oh, it would be so great to study in New York. So let me check out all these programs, like what programs they have. And every single program I found was more like the traditional formal PR that I already had, and it just didn't make sense. And then I didn't come across BIC. And so I was like, that's not going to happen. 2 weeks later, I was like, let me just take one last look and see, make sure I've caught all the programs out there. And I found BIC randomly, and the rest is history. It just seemed so different, and it seemed like it would build on that foundation that I already had. And it completely changed my trajectory from that point.
Thank you for sharing that story. It's a really cool example of just being hungry for more. And I think it dovetails a lot with the mentality that Nancy was describing earlier. One more big question, and we'll get into some more career stuff, but I'm curious, and Matt, I want you to take this one. What was your favorite class at BIC and why?
Oh, wow, that's great. Since Nancy's listening, I'm gonna say, no, I'm just joking. So when I was at BIC, I was in the PR track, but I also wanted to take classes in the I'm on the creative track because I kind of wanted to meld the two, because I see a lot of PR being good creative, like using creative as PR, and I think that I wanted to try to find a way to meld the two. So I took this, it was the creative concepts class, and it basically taught you how to come up with a concept for a creative campaign, like from the beginning, like from the start. You took a brand, you did quick research, you wrote 10,000 headlines for an ad, you created an experiential, et cetera, et cetera. And it was great. It got my writing chops up, it got my creative brain going, and it kind of helped, it kind of influenced some of the PR work that I was doing by creating creative that would create a conversation. And I think that was probably the most fun I had in the class. And yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that. And I like your kind of taking control and kind of melding to do different tracks together to kind of suit your own goals. Ahmet, over to you. What, if you think back on your BIC classes, which one was your favorite?
Since I was in PR track, I enjoy a lot the PR classes, but I also really enjoy the capstone classes. That's where actually, stuff happened.
Ooh, stuff happened. It went down. You got to come with more than that. You can't leave us hanging. Stuff happened. What happened?
As Nancy usually says, like, this is a big program. It is not just a traditional college program, I would say. It's like a think tank. We go deep, right? So we start with the research, and then we gather the team, we discuss the research, and try to come up with the insight. Everybody has opinion, and you kind of like manage the team and find that one idea that wows everyone. And then once that happened, you kind of like start executing the ideas and put the presentation together and come up and present in front of the judges or like the people, like that was I think, one of the most exciting thing during the BIC program. I studied in Istanbul. Went to college in Istanbul, and I did my bachelor degree here in Monroe College. But I think like whatever I learned that I could apply to the real life that happened on BIC program. I started the BIC program, very limited knowledge on communications. And I used to work in a nonprofit organization, and I was, trying to elevate the organization a little bit and try to do a campaign by myself. But, I was looking at the environment and the landscape, and I see that things are changing, and the internet is, changing everything. So I was looking for actually an advertising program in New York City, even though I'm in PR track. I come across, with the BIC program that time. I think I see the tagline, the enter curious, live curious. That kind of like got me, and I guess I try to do everything possible to get in. And I think when Nancy accepted me to the program, I guess that was the one of the best day in my life, I would say.
Wow, that's an amazing testimony. I love these stories of just searching and looking for something different and being able to find it within this program. It's a good segue because I want to jump into a little bit of this kind of how you guys apply what you learned in the program to your current careers. So talk a little bit about when you think about the thing that you apply the most often or that's been the most impactful. Something that you may have learned in BIC, or maybe you didn't learn it in BIC, but you were able to sharpen a skill that you now use in your job. Like, what is that thing? Is there a project that you can think of that was like, oh man, we did this in BIC. We talked about this, what is that thing? I'm just curious as to how this program translates into your professional success.
I can do this one. One thing that I can say really, really did help me a lot was the research. Initially when I was in BIC, I hated doing annotated bibliographies. I hated finding all these different sources. But now that I'm actually at an agency, when I have to do so much research on different pharmaceutical companies and drugs, literally that same structure that I used to use for annotated bibliographies, I'm now using to create fact sheets. So everything that I kind of didn't like, I still have to do. So that just goes to show you that everything with BIC is going to be real life. So literally, I know me and my group, we used to have like a lot of trouble doing our core reports, but that has prepared me so much when I'm actually in these meetings and I have to do like client recaps and I have to go over our agenda for the day. I'm able to really take very strategic notes just because I was able to do a call report when we did our campaign meetings for our capstones. So literally, I'm seeing everything that I've done for the capstones throughout the second year literally manifest within my whole career so far. So it's been really, really interesting to see that happening. And it's given me so much confidence to kind of know that I know what I'm doing and I'm in the right space. So yeah. And one more thing, I want to say sorry for early. I'm nervous, guys. First panel. So I might.
Oh, Tyniece, don't be nervous.
I already embarrassed myself, so I'm going to be good going forward. No more nerves.
Nah, man, this is a no judgment zone. Okay, we just having some fun. I told y'all guys, nobody knows your story like you know your story. So we're just having fun out here in front of about 40 or so people. I turned my participants off. I'm just looking at the chat. But at any rate, so listen, that's a great insight. I love that story, Tyniece. And I will say, like, there's power. If I can interject, there's power. You talk about the note taking and being able to create these fact sheets. And I remember just on the strength of like literally taking notes and being in meetings, I started getting access to like very senior level meetings that I had no business being in, earlier in my career. Just because I was like literally taking notes, and we come out of the meeting and like the director or whoever would be like, wait, what are we supposed to do? And I'd be like, well, according to my notes here. So it's really cool to be able to apply that stuff and really have it make an impact. We're coming off of 2020, obviously pandemic. So I have kind of a two-part pandemic question for you. Is more career focused. I want to start maybe with like Matt, Nehal. Can you talk a little bit about how work changed for you in your experience from what you were doing, how you thought about your job and what your mission was, and really kind of connecting with people before the pandemic, and then what that looked like during and after we were in this as we are in this new normal.
Yeah, sure. So it's interesting. I remember, so in my line of work, I work in nonprofit fundraising, constituent engagement. We do a lot of events. We do a ton of events. It's like where probably 85 to 90% of our budget goes. And so I think, on March 12th, 13th last year, it became pretty apparent that for the next 3 to 6 to 9 to who knew how long that was going to go on, obviously we couldn't do events anymore. We had to do events like this, but it became clear that digital communications was going to take a lead in constituent engagement. And I think that was like the first time it kind of like forced some slow moving industries, especially mine, kind of like into the future to sort of like invest and really think about how they can use communications to engage, because they never really thought about it before. And I've been pushing for a budget. I was the first person to have my role at my work, and I've been pushing, like we never had a budget. So I've been asking for more money every year, get a budget. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have to invest in communications because it's how we're going to engage people moving forward, because not everybody can come to an event on a Tuesday night, in Morningside Heights, when it's raining. I think it really changed, especially slow moving industries like mine, to really think about using communications in that way more than ever. And we've been really, really busy for the last 15 months because of it.
Now, how were you, just a quick follow-up, did you feel thrown by that shift? Were you like excited because like now it was something like you were trying to do all this digital engagement stuff and maybe you didn't have the bandwidth to do it, the budget to do it, and now all of a sudden it was like the only way? How did you feel on that?
Yes, to your question. It was both, it was because we were completely thrown in, we were caught off guard as everybody else. But at the same time, under duress, you can do a lot of creative things and you can come up with a lot of new ideas when you're just kind of thrown into the hot seat like that. And we've done probably some of the best work we've done over the last, year, 15 months, created some of the most engaging campaigns, created conversations online more than ever because we had to, and I think it was really, really cool, bittersweet, obviously, because it took something terrible, a terrible tragedy to have this happen. But it was good that we got the investment in that. It wasn't just, they didn't just try to, turn their wheels and do the same thing in a different way. They were like, no, we got to rethink completely how we do. And I was lucky in that way in my role. So it was a little bit of both.
Nehal, similar question to you. And I think the piece I'm interested in for you is, you talked about this whole idea of generating customer insights, primary research. So I'm particularly interested in your journey of understanding the consumer and whether their needs, wants, desires, motivations changed once the pandemic happened, and how you were able to direct the brand in that respect.
That's a great question. I fell in love with consumer insights. I was introduced to it at BIC. Just wanted to give that plug there. But my role is actually more B2B versus B2C. So our customers are more of that business customer, which is a little bit different and I think a little less fun. But what happened during the pandemic is I actually switched teams within Verizon, and I'm still within the same group. It's called New Business Incubation, and just think of it as kind of like a startup within Verizon. So we kind of don't follow the same rules as like the rest of the giants. So we were really not dependent on location. We used to travel a lot. Like we were all about like the meetings that are online. And so when the pandemic hit, it kind of didn't affect us. But when I switched this new team and they had this kind of idea of where they wanted me to work, I realized that they were kind of just Googling a lot for their research. And I was just like stunned. And so during this pandemic, I mean, we're at the tail end, hopefully, fingers crossed, but I actually built this whole way of us learning insights from our customers. And then I guess like they do experience COVID in a different way. Like if you're thinking of like what happens in warehouses, for example, and the spaces, or like the increase of like people shopping online, right? And what the effect is on like all of the distribution channels. And when you're thinking of like last mile delivery, there's all this stuff. And I know it sounds really like businessy, but I did also watch a ton of webinars on like what was happening to the people and how their habits were changing as well. But yeah, the pandemic definitely did have an effect. And I think when you're thinking of insights, a lot of people are thinking about, let's get back to normal. Like they think it's going to default to how it was. And I think what we're seeing is that some of the habits are sticking and people are going to be living their lives in this new way. So I like, some people say new normal. I just feel like it's just like a different normal. Like it's not even a normal, it's just like a different way of living.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really cool to hear you both talk about the shift that happened during with the pandemic, and you know, of course, never a positive thing, but the way that we reacted as professionals, I think is very, it talks to the resilience of the human spirit, but also to the flexibility of our discipline to be able to ingest such massive change and to be able to kind of turn that into a new and different strategy. But then I think the underpinning of the skills to be able to then execute against that strategy in the midst of everything that was going on in 2020 and into 2021 is really pretty awesome. Tyniece, quick pandemic insight for you. You had the unique experience of being in BIC during the pandemic. So you had a little bit of regular, oh, I'm going to campus. And then you got to look at me standing right here every Monday night for a whole semester, as well as your other teachers. What was that like?
Honestly, I felt robbed because I really loved, just to be dramatic, I really did love interacting with my colleagues in person. But honestly, the transition was really smooth because BIC, I felt like you guys acted really quickly. The professors are really engaging. So I was able to sit back, still get my work done, still be engaged in my courses. However, it was a huge shift from going from being able to communicate with everyone in person, even just having those conversations like just hello, how are you doing? And just like casual conversations you have in the classroom, seeing people face to face, having that engagement, just to like have that just completely stopped and turned off to go into straight virtual. That was a little bit of a hard transition, but I can say for the program, you guys were really, really good with adapting to this new structure. We didn't have any professors that were like stumbling with like Zoom and couldn't do things. And then I feel like my classmates really made it a very positive experience. We still were able to have fun with each other on Zoom and we just made it work. And I appreciate BIC for really being able to keep us engaged, switching from such a collaborative in-person environment to coming to something completely new, which is virtual. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I turn it back to the students and say, you guys were amazing in engaging and being kind of still locked in, even though relegated to these boxes, as Nancy likes to say. And it still was an engaging experience. All right, listen, we got a question in the chat. I'm going to throw this out to whoever wants to take it. Andrea, pardon the pronunciation. Ojeda asks a question. I am currently in the PR track and wonder how beneficial it is not to have a specific definition of what PR handles. How does this affect your day-to-day tasks?
I can jump in. I think I think it's a huge benefit not to be tied to these traditional descriptions or traditional responsibilities of what PR is. Coming from someone who had that traditional background, learning at BIC that there's so many components, and because it is integrated, right? Everything is kind of interconnected and ties together. And so you'll find, even if you're not doing something that's a traditional PR task, like, I don't know, saying writing a news release or writing like internal comms for like a change that's happening within the organization, you're still going to be using pieces like, for me, storytelling. Storytelling is like another passion I fell in love with at BIC. And it's like, it's everything. And you're going to use it all the time. You're going to need it when you're talking to teammates to get them on board with what you're doing. You're going to need it when you're trying to evangelize like a strategy you have or an idea that you have, and you need to get buy-in from whether that's leadership or your colleagues or even another group, because you can't just do it on your own. And so I think that you're going to have all these little tools in your toolkit, to be as cliche as possible, that you'll be able to pull out when you see it. And it just gives you so much freedom and so much flexibility.
Thank you for that great answer. And I'm going to give you a one-time. I don't know if you heard that. I'm trying
Love
to
it. No, I heard it. That's
okay,
my first time
because you
ever.
mentioned
That's
internal
awesome.
comms. So anybody that mentions internal comms, I'm the internal comms guy. So I got to give you the quick air horn joint for any internal comms mentions. Listen, our time is drawing nigh. We're almost done. So I think I'm going to do a round robin for one more question for you guys. There's so many questions we didn't even get to, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface. So I appreciate you guys being open and sharing your experience. The thing I want to end with, we started with this concept of the zig and the zag. I can relate to that. I heard a few people say that, this job didn't exist. I know, Ahmet, you said that your job didn't exist before you took it. Similar, Nehal, you were talking about how you're trying to figure out these folks with Google and stuff, and you're trying to teach them how to do this stuff. When you look at your career trajectory, what advice, based on your experience, would you give to someone else who is looking at their resume and says, I want to do something that's not on this resume? What advice do you give to them right now? And especially as they're looking at BIC as an option to kind of build a bridge to that next level, what advice do you have for them? And I'll start with you, with Ahmet, because we haven't heard from you in a minute.
I think it is really important to find your space, to try something new that you like to do. And also, when you do it, you will get appreciated doing it. I think that's one of the important thing. If you can't find that space, that might be challenging for you to try something new, or if it's not being appreciated, you might not realize that it is worked or not. So find a place that you will have freedom to try something new.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Matt, what do you have for us?
This is great. It's a great question because we were talking about zigs and zags. I have a similar story to Nehal where I was a theater major. I majored in costume design. And I think, when you gotta go from that to, raising money for nonprofits, you just gotta do it. You just gotta try new things. And the biggest thing that I would say that I think it's really enriched me in a lot of ways, and it's also helped me try new things. It's also helped me hone my craft, is volunteer. And I think that, there's always, especially if you're looking to get into PR, right? There's always a political campaign looking to get people help texting. There's always a nonprofit looking for people to get involved in helping to write fundraising emails. And that's how I got into it. And I think that if you just volunteer, find something that you're passionate about, hone your craft in that way, find something like Ahmet says, that kind of find your space that way. That's how I got into it. So I would say, volunteer your time, and hone your chops that way.
This is amazing. We got 2 more to go. I just want to pause because I just want to make sure that all of our participants are really soaking up these gems, because I truly believe that that these insights and experiences that our panelists have lived are true lessons that we can all learn from. And not only are they informative, but I think, inspirational. So let's just finish off. I know Nehal and then Tyniece, you guys can give us your thoughts on that evolution as well.
Sure. I think the thing that I would say is stay open. You don't have to have it figured out, but I feel like you'll know if there's something that you need, like you'll feel yourself being drawn to something, or you'll feel like you need to have a change, or like what you're doing is not the right fit for you. And you don't need to know exactly what the next step is. Honestly, like I had no idea what to expect at BIC. I thought that I would just do the regular traditional PR stuff and just build on the skills that I had. And little did I know that I would learn things that completely changed the direction of my career and what I was doing. And another thing, just to add on to that, is society kind of has these traditional views, right? Like you have to have this linear resume, right? Just like slowly building from like the junior to the senior, all in the same path. Everyone wants to put you in one box. And I knew that I used to be kind of embarrassed about how I had so many zigs and zags in my background, in my career. And I used to kind of like trying to brush over it or be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I know that I don't have the traditional like linear route. But now I embrace it because there's so many things that are transferable skills. There's so much that you can bring to the table from having such diverse experiences. So I think that everyone needs to know that you can own it and don't let that ever hold you back when you're trying to think of a change.
Yes, Tyniece, take us home.
Yes. For me, it was really all about making sure that I figured out a way to create my own opportunities. As I was telling you guys, I've been told no a lot. There's a lot of internships that I didn't get. So that kind of encouraged me to just do my own thing. So I would literally like go after my friends and family who needed help with like their small businesses. They needed help branding it, getting on socials, they're influencers and they needed help. So I would do things like that on the side. And I started calling myself the brand refresher. And that honestly started to be a talking point for me in interviews. So if you're looking to transition, start to look for ways that you can create your own opportunities if you can't get them. There's so many things that you can do out there. You just want to make sure that you have those really tangible talking points when you're going on these interviews and you're trying to transition into a field that you've never been into.
Oh man, that was such a high note on which to wrap up this discussion. Ahmet, Matt, Tyniece, Nehal, thank you so much for sharing your insights, for sharing your experience. And the information was very useful. The inspiration was a motivation for me. And I just appreciate it so much. And there's one more thing before I hand it back over to Nancy. We always used to start our class and sometimes end our classes with a little bit of, well, we always used to do Kahoots. I don't have a Kahoot for y'all because there's nothing to quiz you on, but we always used to start with a little bit of music and end with a little bit of music. I have a playlist over here that's called Walk Up Songs. I know this is the end of our segment, but I just want to play because I feel very like excited and like hyper and just amped up because of all this great information. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this on for you. And then I'm going to bring Professor Nancy Tagg back onto the stage to continue the program. But
remix for the city, let's just start snapping. Crackhead bleak on the jack, like, let's make it happen.
They could stop me. I'm all the way up. All the way up right now. The sky's the limit. Just take it by the horns. All right, that's it. Never leave.
Oh man, I love it.
All right, over to you, Nancy. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it, you guys.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Edward. What a great panel. I mean, you guys are awesome. I mean, I don't know whether it's just proud mama, but I could just sit here and stare at you guys all night long. I just love what you guys have been doing. I love to see your faces. And I can't thank you enough for participating and supporting the program. But more than that, just telling your stories. Your stories are awesome. I'm inspired by your stories. And I wish we had like 20, I'm sure the rest of the audience is, it's like, no, I don't think I could do 20 hours with Matt, but I could do 20 hours with Matt. I could do 20 hours with all of you. So I am going to shift it over to our next segment. I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight to our program in which we talked about how public relations works. I would like to thank our moderator, Edward Ford. I would give you an entire program for hours at a time any day. You are absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for being so engaging and for asking such probing questions. I would like to thank my BIC alumni panelists who I love and adore so deeply. Again, proud mama. I love you all. Nehal, Ahmet, Matt, and Tyniece, you are welcome, as you know, back in the program anytime. And thank you for being on this pedestal where we can celebrate how public relations works, especially in an integrated communications framework.